Hey guys, this is Tim Lauer on the Tim Lauer Podcast, where we talk about all things politics, small business, real estate, and affects you locally. Today we have Senator Chris Elliott, and let's dive right into it. Chris, from a conservative perspective, what is the proper role of state government in the lives of Alabama citizens?
As little as possible is the best answer I can give you. I mean, Tim, one of the reasons you and I get along so well is we're both business guys, right? I just want government to stay out of your way so that you can run and operate your business with as little interference as possible. Look, if it's about roads or public safety or public education, that's the role of government. Everything else is ancillary and not important. And that's what I fight for every day in Montgomery, is trying to keep government at bay, trying to shrink the size of government, trying to right size the size of government, trying to lower taxes. And so those are the fights we have every day. And it's tough. It's tough to get folks in the bureaucracy up there, the Montgomery swamp, to understand business, and a particularly small business, is what drives this economy, what drives innovation, and government does nothing but slow that down.
That's exactly right. I agree with that. What are you doing to keep government limited and efficient at the state level?
So we watch budgets tightly. That's the best way to get government on a diet, right, is to trim its budget. That's the best and easiest way. But then we look at things that are just mundane sometimes, whether it's business license fees or, at the state level, or what kind of regulations we place on businesses. I try to roll those back wherever we can. And then we've got 121 occupational licensing boards that regulate everything we do in the state, from real estate to home building, right, to wrestling. No kidding, private investigators, massage therapists, all of these types of things. And so what we try to do is combine those boards where possible, lower fees where possible, eliminate the boards altogether where possible, and get those things under control. That's an issue I've been focused on for years. And again, this year, have another piece of legislation that's trying to combine those boards, shrink the regulations surrounding those. All too often, they exist only for the benefit of the board itself. They're not providing any public service. They're not providing any public safety. They're just there to collect a fee and mooch off of small businesses like yours and mine.
That's right. So I got one of your pamphlets in the mail the other day.
Yeah, great.
And what stood out to me was it said you were fighting the woke liberal agenda.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? What are you doing to win the war on woke?
So President Trump has been a leader on this, but we really have done great work in Alabama on that since the Republicans took over in the legislature, right? We've banned CRT and DEI in Alabama in our education institutions. We're weeding that out of government wherever it can be. We're looking at restructuring boards that are self-appointing, these kind of ivory tower boards like the Department of Archives and History, that's full of folks that have these woke ideologies and agendas. We're looking at libraries. You and I talked about that some. One of the ways to manage the wokeness that's happening is empower elected officials like you and I to make sure that if we've got bureaucrats out there or board appointments that are doing things that the folks that we represent don't want, then we can remove them from office or from their positions. And so that's exactly what we're pushing and have been successful pushing, and will continue to. Woke is dead in Alabama. As long as I'm there, we're gonna roll it back. We're gonna make sure it stays dead, and any little vestiges that remain, we're gonna root them out.
That's great. That's great to hear. And that kind of rolls into how does the state and local governments kind of work together, but then also how does the state government stay out of the local government's way?
Well, so that's a great example. The libraries, for instance, it's a microcosm, but it really will show you how I feel things should be run. So I'm a former local government guy, right? Used to serve as the chair of the Baldwin County Commission, and so it's very important for me to make sure that our local folks, including you, you're the closest to the people. You hear in the grocery store what's important to them, what's important in Foley, what's important in Baldwin County. And so I want you making as many of those decisions as possible. And so current state statute on the libraries says, hey, you appoint a library board member, they get to stay for the entire term of that appointment. I want to change that. I want you, when you delegate your authority as a city council member to the library board, hey, if they're acting up, you ought to be able to remove them. Just like a member of the governor's cabinet, they need to serve at the pleasure of the appointing authority. And so I want the state statute to reflect that, and that's what we're pushing right now. As many decisions as we can make locally, that's the best way to govern.
Great. Let's shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about some legislation thing you've been working on, the mud dumping.
Yeah, wow. What a big issue and one that was really important and honestly a fun issue for me. You and I have been out on the water before, right? Mm-hmm. We did a podcast on the water one time, which was really cool. But the water is so incredibly important to me personally, to my kids. It's important to our area. But it's important to our economy as well. And when I saw what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was doing in Mobile Bay, when they were dredging the ship channel and disposing of that mud on top of the water, I went, this is such a horrible thing. I mean, it is absolutely impacting water quality. It's impacting marine life. It's impacting submerged aquatic vegetation. But here's the thing it's really impacting. Our economy. That's right. Right? We have over 8.5 million visitors that come to Alabama's beaches every year. And why do they come? They come for the beach, but they come for the water. And if we're, in one hand saying, hey, come hang out with us, come fish with us, but we're dumping all of this mud continuously, by the way, on top of everything, it's a horrible message to send. It's a horrible look, and it drives occupancy rates, right? It impacts real estate values. It impacts all of those things. And so while the port and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers may say things like, oh, we don't want to do anything that impacts the economy and the port, well, they don't care about real estate values. They don't care about tourism. And so it's my job to balance those out. And that's what Representative Rhett Marcus and I did with that bill that is now signed into law. And and so we have stopped that practice. I'm excited about that. And we'll see a change in water quality. We'll see a change in the way the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is disposing of that material.
That's great. That's a great example of how you went up to Montgomery and kind of showed them how important things like that are to our area, and thank you for doing that, Chris.
Well, it's a fight, man, and I will tell you, sometimes it's 3D chess, but you gotta have a senator who is willing to fight, who is able to fight, who has the energy and the aptitude to get in there and get it done, and know how the machine works, but use it for the people's advantage.
That's right. So speaking of the beaches, let's talk about the ALEA partnership with the helicopters.
Yeah, so Sheriff Anthony Lowry came to me a couple of years ago, and we have been trying to figure out how we protect our visitors and our residents better at the beach. And when I was on the commission, we had some we have them every year, but we had a lot of drownings, especially in the Fort Morgan area, and it's just sad to see those types of things.
That's right. That's right.
Of course, we had a sheriff's deputy not long ago that unfortunately died while trying to save somebody, and it's just so frustrating to see that loss of life that just should have never occurred. And so Sheriff Lowry came to me and he said, look, we can put all the flags up we want to. We can put all the warnings out that we want to. But when people drive down here and spend the money that they spend, they're getting in the water. They're going to get in the water. And how are we going to do a better job rescuing them? So a great example of a partnership between state and local government. So in this instance, the City of Orange Beach and City of Gulf Shores agreed to provide lifeguards to fly on ALEA, a state trooper helicopter. And the state troopers are providing the chopper, the state troopers are providing the fuel, and I made sure and will continue to make sure we have money in the budget for the state to provide that resource so that the locals have a ride. The state troopers don't like getting in the water. The lifeguards are ready to get in the water. They just don't have a helicopter. And we melded the two of those together so that chopper's flying on our busiest weekends. They work out with the locals on when things are happening, spring break, long weekends, whatever. And so that helicopter that you see flying up and down the beach with lifeguards in it is provided with state funding They're able to dispatch quickly if they're not already in the air. Oftentimes, they're able to respond in just minutes to somebody that's in trouble. And that lifeguard jumps in the water right next to the person that's in need, as opposed to having to expend all of their energy to get out to that person. And so they're fresher, they're ready to go, and they're there almost immediately. And it will, and it has already saved lives.
That's great. Such a great program. And we were at the rescue team down there in Gulf Shores, and they couldn't talk enough about how highly that program was. So what a great impact. On
great partnership.
Area. That's right. Let's dive into solar farms.
Oh boy, what a hot topic, and I think a hot topic that will always be. Look, regardless of how you feel about solar farms, and as we grow almost 8,000 people every year in Baldwin County, we have to look at land use and wonder, is this the best use of 4,000 acres? And I think it's not, right? And I'm on record of saying, hey, this is probably not the best way to use 8,000 acres. But it brings up the topic of land use and growth again, right? So Baldwin County is one of the few counties in Alabama that has a local law that permits zoning outside of municipal areas. Most of the rest of the state, only municipalities have zoning. But in Baldwin County, fast-growing Baldwin County, there's the potential for zoning. But I'm a big democracy guy, right? And I'm big about the people having their right to vote. And that means that zoning in Baldwin County is driven by the voters. That's right. And so if voters want zoning in a particular planning district, then they have to petition for a referendum, and then they get to vote on whether or not they have zoning. Now, it's a double-edged sword, right? Mm-hmm. If you want zoning, that means you're going to have some protections, but it also means you can't just do anything you want with your property. But the solution to this solar farm, if you want to stop it, is a zoning vote that would preclude the solar farm from moving forward. It's real simple. All you got to do is petition the probate judge to have a referendum. He's going to require you to have 10% of the registered voters in the planning district sign a petition. You get that 10%. There's going to be an immediate moratorium, right? And Foley's done some moratoriums, I know, here recently to control some growth. But there's going to be an immediate moratorium while they do a zoning overlay, and then there's a vote of the people within just 90 days to determine whether or not there's zoning. So if the people of Stockton want to regulate land use, it's up to y'all. It's up to the people to decide if they want to do that or not. But that's the tool if they want to.
Gotcha. Yeah, a lot of heated debate on the solar farms right now.
Well, you and I talked about this earlier. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And I don't have the solution. The solutions don't come out of Montgomery sometimes. What comes out of Montgomery and how it should be is what we talked about when we started. Local control and the voters getting to decide what they want. And the voters in Baldwin County have the tools to regulate growth if they want to.
That's right. And I was glad to see so many people show up to the town hall and be engaged. Most times they don't, and it turns into comments on Facebook or different things, but people not actually going and taking the right steps to make change happen.
That's right. But it's important also to know what are the real solutions. And that's what I try to do is provide people with the real solutions as opposed to just screaming into the wind. How do you actually fix it? And this is how you actually fix it.
That's right. Hope you're enjoying the Tim Lauer podcast so far. We talk about all things small business, real estate, politics, local and national issues that affect you most. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to drop a comment below. I read and reply to each and every one. Now let's get back to it. So what are some things you're working on right now?
Gosh, the budgets continue to be a big thing for us. Since Republicans took over control of the Alabama legislature, we've had no proration. We've had balanced budgets. We've had rainy day funds and savings accounts. Those are great. And they allow business to not worry about government being dysfunctional, right? And so when you have businesses going, okay, government's just doing government's thing, that's great. But when you have business businesses worried about whether or not government's going to be able to process your license, process your permit, just do what they're supposed to do. That's a problem. And if you have unbalanced budgets and proration, then you don't get that. We've been able to expand school funding. We're spending more funding in schools across Baldwin County than ever in the history of the county. We've seen increases in per pupil spending since I got there of almost 35%. Wow. And just amazing gains in education when it comes to literacy and numeracy. You see test scores going up through the roof. When I go to other states to talk to my counterparts and listen to what they're doing in their states, Alabama is on the map as it relates to our education gains, and that's huge. We're making huge gains in workforce development, right? Small businesses and large industries alike are needing workers and have great high-paying jobs for these workers. Almost 60% of Alabama students don't go to college, a 2-year or 4-year institution. And so what are they doing? They're going straight into the workforce. We've made huge gains, whether it's Baldwin Prep or even our career tech programs within some of our other schools. We've made huge programs that I'm working on a tax cut and tax credit right now for workforce development that mirrors the growing Alabama tax credit, which has been hugely successful in bringing in projects like Novellis in North Baldwin County, a $5 billion project. But I'm working on this workforce tax credit that will absolutely use an industry-driven workforce development program. And so that'll allow businesses to direct those types of education programs so they're truly getting the workers and the skills that businesses need as opposed to what the educrats think businesses need. And so anything we can do to cut government out of how we solve these problems, the better we are. And so I'll continue to work on issues like that day in and day out. It's a full slate of legislation, and sometimes, man, I look at a 14 to 16 hour day and all the little plates spinning up in the air, and it's a challenge, but we're getting it done.
That's right. And one thing we've learned is government getting involved with business, schools, any of that stuff, it just doesn't work. What's one of the scariest thing they say? Ronald Reagan says is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Well, and so one of the things, I had a colleague that told me a long time ago, and it has stuck with me, I am the people's representative to the government, not the government's representative to the people. And if you've got an elected official that thinks any other way, that's the wrong guy, right? And I have people in Montgomery tell me all the time, man, are you enjoying your time up here? And I went, no, absolutely not. And if you have somebody that's excited about going to Montgomery, wrong person to send. It is a fight and a slog every day. The best time I have is the drive home and getting home to see my family and getting back to my house in Baldwin County, because I don't want to leave here, but I leave here to protect here and fight for y'all, and that's what I do every single week.
We appreciate it, Chris. Let me ask you this. I probably should have started with this. For the people who don't know, what is a senator's role and what are they responsible for?
So we make the law. As terrifying as that might be, we make the law. We also set budgets and are appropriators. And so every bit of funding that goes to any state agency, it comes through us and through that budgeting process. And then all of the laws, the criminal code, the civil code, all of the regulations that are promulgated, all of the fees and fines and all of that kind of stuff come either from the statute itself or from, through the Administrative Procedures Act. And so that behemoth is the thing that I try to control, try to shrink, try to, take my machete to every time I get a chance to. I serve as the chairman of a pretty influential committee in the Senate, the County Municipal Government Committee. And so just on the way over here, I was on the phone with my clerk deciding which bills go on, the committee calendar for next week. And so once those bills that other members file get placed in my committee, I have almost unilateral control over whether or not those bills move forward to become law. And then behind the scenes, I have conversations with my colleagues and our leadership team about what bills go on the calendar to even be considered. And so, Tim, I read everything. There will be over 1,000 pieces of legislation that get filed each and every session, and I'll read every last one of them, study every last one of them, because you have to. If you don't know what's going on, and you're not a player in what is getting passed and what's not. It's the difference between setting the menu and just showing up for dinner.
Gotcha. What are some misconceptions about senator's office?
A lot of people tell me all the time. They say, oh, hey, you're this big fancy senator, and I was thinking about on the way home last night to go speak to another group. My dinner was 2 pieces of beef jerky, from the Buc-ee's that I keep under the seat of my truck, because we run so hard and so fast that oftentimes that's dinner. It's not a fancy job. It's not a glamorous job, and I'm not a fancy, glamorous person. It's a hard job. People think we've got all this staff and all these folks, taking us around. It's far from that. It's a 14, 16 hour a day slog, but it's incredibly impactful, Tim, and it matters. There are forces in this state that are out for themselves,
Sure.
and it is a fight to make sure that you're out there serving, that I'm out there serving the people, and I never ever ever lose sight of who sent me to Montgomery and why they sent me to Montgomery. And I promise you, it's not to make a lobbyist happy. It's not for my own good. It's to protect hustlers like you who are out there day in, day out, trying to make a living for their family, trying to teach their kids, how to be good conservatives and how to fend for themselves in the world, and trying to keep government out of your way. I'm the people's representative to the government, not the other way around.
Nice. Where have you stood your ground when it mattered?
Gosh, everywhere, right? And so one of the things I tell new senators that come in, I ask them, what are your principles? What are your key principles? And if they don't know, if they can't articulate that, I said, you need to go home and think about that. Because if you come to Montgomery without principles, you're in trouble. If you don't have principles like limited government, if you don't have principles, about conservative budgeting, you're going to get eaten alive in Montgomery. And so you have to make sure that on everything you stand your ground. People talk about picking fights, but you have to say, okay, listen, does this expand government? I'm against it. Does this increase taxes or fees? I'm against it. Does this limit, the ability to, for two parties to enter into a contract willingly? Then I'm against it. You have to apply your good conservative principles day in, day out. And so standing your ground is something you do on everything. And it takes a lot of energy, right?
Sure,
and I tell you about fighting, and I mean it. It is a fight. Everything is a fight. I wish I could say it's all kumbaya. It's not. And there are regional fights within that, right? A good one, and Foley's been a big beneficiary of this, was a fight on Go MESA funding, right? The Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act that provides offshore oil and gas lease revenue to the state. Well, before we passed a bill in the Senate and in the House, since the governor signed it into law, that money could have gone all over the state. But I saw what happened with the BP funding, and I said, we're not going to do that again. And so this year, the governor's budget has $91 million in it that is required by statute because of a law I passed to be spent just in Mobile and Baldwin County and nowhere else. And so that's making sure that we fight for coastal Alabama. We fight to make sure we get our fair share back from Montgomery. But that's just an example of one fight. We fight for that every day.
That's right. That's what we need. It's people like yourself up there that have the energy and the stamina and the willingness to go up there and battle for Baldwin County. So in this race, and I don't think we mentioned it, but you are up for reelection.
Yep.
And you do have somebody running against you. What separates you from your opponent?
I don't know him all of that well, and I'll let him speak for himself and try to articulate, why he thinks he would be better at this. But I'll tell you right now, you have to know how this works. Montgomery is 3D chess. The State House is 3D chess, and there are folks out there playing this game that have been doing it for a long time. Not just legislators, but lobbyists and other interests, and the big mules, et cetera. You have to understand how this works in order to be effective. You have to understand how to drive, how to set the menu, or you're just showing up for supper and you can decide whether to eat it or not. But that's not being effective. That's not driving. And so you've got to have the intellect, the energy, the capacity to actually drive, understand how the process works, work the process for your people, for your district. Otherwise, you're ineffective. And the reason I do this is because I want to make sure we have somebody that's not just fighting for us, but's winning, right? That's proving results. I am a product-oriented person, not a process-oriented person. I want to make sure that we deliver. And one of the things that I do every single day is deliver for Baldwin County.
Awesome. As we're kind of gearing towards the end of the show, what is it that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about with the voters?
Somebody asked me the other day, interestingly on another podcast, in one word to describe your kind of how you view your legislative strategy. And I think my colleagues would tell you this too. And that word is aggressive. I am known as a bulldog in the State House, for good or for bad. And whether that's state agencies realizing they're going to do the right thing, or I'm coming for them, or it's my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, or even colleagues within the party, when we're fighting for our fair share, when we're fighting for conservative values, they know I'm not playing around. And so I am aggressive and assertive at making sure we fight for Baldwin County, we fight for conservative values. And if you talk to other conservative groups around the state, like Eagle Forum or the Alabama Policy Institute, those types of folks that are known for hardcore conservative values, they will tell you that guy is a fighter and he gets things done. And that's not a reputation I shy away from. I embrace it.
That's what we need. What is your message to the voters in Baldwin County?
Look, if you want results, I'm your guy. If you want somebody that doesn't like going to Montgomery but goes to Montgomery for you and to fight for you, then I'm your guy. If you want somebody that is effective and aggressive and assertive and will absolutely deliver and continue to deliver results, then I'm your guy. If you want somebody who's respected in Montgomery and known for getting things done and ensuring that Baldwin County is well represented, then I'm your guy.
Great. So we've known each other for many years. I think the first interview or podcast we've done together was during COVID, up in Orange Beach, and then you've come to my office here, and then we've done one out on the boat on the Gulf of America.
That's
I
right.
don't think it was Gulf of America then, but it's Gulf of America now. But I appreciate the fact that you're a phone call away. You always get back to me or anybody that I've sent your way pretty quickly, and you're in support of small government. You're in support of small business, and you truly go up to Montgomery and represent our area. So thank you for everything you do, Chris, and thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.